Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Countdown to the Fintech Talents Festival interview. I'm Lisa Moyle, Director of Strategy at VC Innovations, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Peter Berg, VP of Business Development and Strategy at Very Good Security. Peter's going to discuss what's going on at VGS and what they're excited to discuss at the upcoming Fintech Talents Festival. Hello, Peter.
Hello, nice to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. I wonder if we could start, Peter, with you telling us a little bit about yourself, your role at VGS.
Sure, I'd be happy to. As you mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Business Development and Strategy, which means I look after our strategic partnerships. I evaluate new business initiatives, and my team works on finding ways to scale and grow our business, largely through points of leverage and partnerships with external folks. And I actually joined VGS coming on 4 years ago, where after leaving Visa, where I used to run Visa Ventures, which is their in-house corporate venture arm, I helped kind of get that off the ground and restarted and grew it into a global program. And it was actually in that context that I first met Mahmood when he was starting VGS. And I tried to invest in his Series A round, but it was so oversubscribed. There were so many people that wanted to get in that he wasn't able to make room for us. And perhaps shrewdly, as an entrepreneur, said, "Hey, let's build a relationship, and maybe you can come back to me in the Series B." Well, he wasn't wrong about that. But in between, I ended up leaving Visa, and after I left, we reconnected, and the initial vision that he had pitched for the company still resonated very deeply with me. It was a problem that I understood very well from my time at Visa and from just operating in the fintech ecosystem. And I thought that Very Good Security, or VGS as we often say, had a unique approach to it. And so it spoke to me, and I ended up voting with my feet, and here we are, almost 4 years later. So
I like that a lot. You like the company so much, you joined them, and that says a
yeah, I mean,
lot.
I got I got a seat at the table a different way other than as an
Yeah.
investing through Visa. But I mean, the thing that I think really spoke to me was, Visa for a long time has been espousing this idea of devaluing payments data, or making sensitive payments data, I guess non-valuable or useless in the face of compromise or hacking, right? So they've done things with like tokenization and a number of other technologies and initiatives to kind of devalue that data out in the market. And VGS, in many ways, is like extending that vision to a broader superset of sensitive data. So it doesn't just have to be payments data. Of course, fintech and payments is a core use case for us, but it's the idea that you can't hack what isn't there, and to devalue sensitive data both at rest and in motion, and making it easier for businesses to use sensitive data without the liability and the risk of having to handle it themselves.
Thanks. That sets the scene so well. So thanks for that, Peter. I wonder if we could move on to a question about innovation and sticking with payments. There's been, I don't need to tell you, lots of innovation in payments in recent years. But what are some of the developments that stand out for you in the past year or so?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's been a lot of innovation, a lot of change. I remember several years ago when felt like it was, I could still keep on top of most of the developments, and now they're moving so quickly. I think a few trends that we've been seeing, in particular, recently there's been a lot of consolidation, especially among some more traditional players. You see some of the larger private companies, like Stripe, and others who are getting to interesting points of scale. But on the other side, you see more traditional incumbents. They're actually consolidating. And so, you have like FIS, which has rolled up WorldPay, which previously had rolled up Vantiv, and Fiserv and First Data, and Global Payments and TSYS, and even SoFi, I think was quite shrewd in their acquisition of Galileo to kind of augment their capabilities. So that's been definitely I guess, one thread. And I think that it seems to me, from looking from the outside in, that perhaps some of the legacy incumbents are trying to compete more effectively with the relatively newer players like Stripe and Square and even Shopify, who are making waves in the fintech space. So I think that's one thing. It would be interesting to see how that comes out, how that shakes out in terms of like the consolidation of technologies and capabilities, and also market share. And then the other thing I've noticed is payments are getting baked into, so to speak, more and more experiences, so almost natively, right? So like payment facilitation has been an increasing trend over time. That's, embedding payment services or fintech capabilities into perhaps, traditional businesses or certainly not fintech businesses that are now baking in fintech capabilities. And it's almost becoming part of the whole user experience, right? Whereas these things used to be decoupled, or you would bolt on a payment experience or something else in addition to the traditional experience or whatever the user's flow might otherwise be. And now these things are merging almost into like this seamless user experience. Uber, obviously a well-known example, but it was one of the earliest ones, and I saw it from my seat when I was at Visa, how seamlessly they integrated payments into the experience, and even we're working with the networks to make it even easier for driver payouts and some other things where it's natively baked into that platform, pay in, pay out, and it's no longer decoupled. It's more kind of just seamlessly blended with the overall user experience. I think there'll be some other things that I think we'll be talking about, in a year or 2 or 3 years time, is an emerging trend, which I think is like infrastructure as a service or banking as a service. Certainly for those of us in fintech, that's been something that I've been watching quite keenly for a while. But I think we're going to see that emerge as maybe another trend that perhaps in a future interview we can be talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could spend ages talking on each one of those themes individually. So clearly, Peter, you have a tremendous amount of experience in the payments sector. And I know you touched a little bit on this at the beginning of our conversation, but what was exciting to you about VGS? I know you tried to invest early on and now you've joined them, and the problems that they're looking to solve.
Yeah, it's thanks for the question. So when I think about like what is VGS doing, right? It's really trying to make it easier and also safer for businesses to use sensitive data to achieve their outcomes, right? So no one starts a business to get audited. Like I've never heard an entrepreneur say, "Well, I'm starting this business so I can go through the privilege of a PCI or a SOC 2 audit," right? Like no one does that. They're doing something to achieve some sort of outcome or make things easier for the ecosystem or just like make life better generally. But to do that, you need to, clear a bunch of hurdles or tick a number of boxes. And frankly, it's hard, right? I mean, it's even if you want to do the right thing, it's not always obvious how. And I saw that, when I was at Visa, we had a lot of entrepreneurs and earlier stage companies that were trying to do business with banks or with the network. And for good reasons, there were diligence processes in place or security requirements or compliance requirements. And there's a reason why these things exist. The problem is it can be quite challenging to navigate and to build and maintain these environments. And so what really captivated my attention, back then and even and holds my attention still today, is VGS helping businesses handle and exchange and use sensitive data to achieve their outcomes while reducing or eliminating the risk associated with that sensitive data. And so, you basically, you can protect your data and keep it extremely safe and, I guess, adhere to the regulatory or compliance requirements that you have to comply with without any loss in functionality, right? There used to be a trade-off between sort of flexibility and functionality. And we think that's a false dichotomy, frankly. I think you shouldn't have to trade off capabilities for security, and so that's really where we're quite focused. And I think anything we're doing, whether it's payment optimization to help people process payments more effectively, or even just exchange or embed fintech experiences into, like previously we were talking about that trend, making it easier to embed those fintech experiences into your existing business without increasing your regulatory or security or compliance scope. I think that allows people, ultimately, the net result is that they can build differentiation and new features and actually ship new products and services and they can actually do that faster and with lower operational costs than they could previously. So that out-of-the-box infrastructure that sort of just makes compliance much easier and much more cost-effective, I think, is a differentiator for the industry, because then it allows people to build kind of the new cool things that actually are going to move everything forward, as opposed to being mired and having to build and maintain sort of this undifferentiated yet still very important kind of heavy lifting for the compliance and security side.
I like the way that you position that as making things easier for people to do interesting stuff. And thinking about, you covered some of the complexity around data security and compliance, which, as you noted, are really complex issues. Looking at sort of the individual, do you think people are becoming more aware of how their data is used and the related security issues? Do you think it's, and following on from that, do you think it's possible to communicate and educate in ways that end users can understand? Because as you said, this is an incredibly complex area.
Absolutely. It's a really good question, because we've been talking primarily about businesses, but ultimately this intimately affects consumers and their data. I do think that people are becoming much more aware of how their data is being used. That you see a lot more talk about privacy and use of data and permissions. Certainly, everything from regulatory landscape with GDPR and a number of other global privacy regulations, all the way through to the way some companies, large tech companies, are talking about privacy and highlighting that. We actually recently collaborated with payments to publish a report on the privacy paradox, where we talked about, where we collected actually data on how consumers' online behavior has changed and evolving, and how has their wariness about data privacy impacted their engagement with businesses. And it's kind of remarkable, to see the increase in cyber attacks. Less than half of consumers actually store payment credentials in online accounts. I would imagine that a good chunk of that is informed by kind of fear of potential hacks. We've seen, even in 2020 alone, a 400% increase overall in cyber attacks. And I think we've also seen that a strong majority of consumers would be highly likely to switch to another online platform if they felt that their current provider was not doing the right things around their PII. So I do think it has downstream effects for businesses that need to think about how does this affect the consumer psychology and the consumer behavior. It's really important. And back to the point I was making earlier, it's not always easy, or it hasn't historically always been easy, even if you want to do the right thing, to even know where to begin or how to maintain that. And so I think that's one of the good things about moving the industry forward, is giving businesses the right tools to help consumers feel safer, and also make the businesses more secure and limit their own risk, right, and their own sort of liability or costs associated with this. So I think the challenge for merchants in the future is going to be, making consumers aware of the steps that they're taking to protect data, and also to engender trust and demonstrate to consumers how those changes are actually working to their benefit. So we're trying to help our own customers. We're a B2B company, right? We don't typically engage directly with the consumer, but we're trying to empower our customers, as an example, with tools and ways to communicate, assurances to their end users and their consumers that data, in fact, is being securely vaulted. I mean, some of our customers, in fact, actively tout, VGS as one of their suppliers, because it helps them communicate to their customers. Like, in many cases, they're not even seeing your private data, and that private data is encrypted and segmented, so it's kept separate and apart from your record, maybe with that merchant or with that business, which makes it inherently safer. You're not storing all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. So that does have real benefits for the consumer, and we've seen it now even appear in marketing copy from some of our customers, which I think says something about how consumers are thinking about it.
Yeah, I like the way that you frame that as good security is good business. And finally, Peter, I know
said. You said it better than I did.
Feel free to use that.
I might. Thank you.
And finally, Peter, I know we touched a little bit on, you gave us a nice overview of some future trends, but looking ahead, maybe you can pick one of the really exciting developments that you see on the horizon.
Yeah, it's fun to think about the future and where things might be going. I certainly don't claim to have a crystal ball, but I do think that what we're seeing is that payment system ecosystems and especially and fintech infrastructure has never been, I think, as adaptable and also like abstractable, if I may say, like than before. So there are ways of I guess the modernization of infrastructure continues and if I'm a payments nerd, and so there's a lot of plumbing that is like all these fancy shiny experiences that we see are oftentimes built on very legacy plumbing that is not particularly flexible or sexy or even easy to work with. And so I think as we see the infrastructure get better, it's going to really unlock a whole set of new capabilities that entrepreneurs and businesses can build on top of. I also think it's easier for businesses to, I don't want to say unbundle, but I mean, kind of use the right constellation of services and vendors and partners to achieve their objectives. You're seeing kind of the abstraction of complexity away from kind of the end experiences that is getting built. And so, low code solutions or other sort of, modern infrastructure that allow developers to focus on building features and building value as opposed to, investing in that sort of hidden but very important plumbing that is never seen at the surface, but without which you can't actually do anything interesting. I think that's one of the most exciting developments. It's often kind of below the waterline, but that is really the foundation on which so many of these things are, these innovative fintech experiences and payments experiences in particular are built. Right. So, I mean, that's certainly where we're focused. There are a lot of other people that are doing complementary things in the space. We're trying to solve for the compliance and security infrastructure so that people don't have to think about it and they can just inherit the investment that we've made in that infrastructure. But I think you're seeing it across the board in a variety of different services that allow, kind of new, really interesting use cases and consumer and business experiences to emerge. So that's to me what's exciting is like abstracting away the complexity and taking a more modular, modern, developer-focused approach to fintech innovation.
Thanks for that, Peter. And I think it's a great note to end on the importance of some really solid, perhaps not sexy plumbing. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you very much to Peter and to VGS. We look forward to hearing more from you and your colleagues at the Fintech Talents Festival on the 15th and 16th of November at the Brewery in London. And the same dates, but different platform if you're joining us virtually. So thank you again for your time, Peter.
Thank you for having me when we're looking forward to the event as well. So thank you so much.